classification of Indian architecture. So our Indian architecture, broadly we have seen it is divided into three periods: ancient, medieval, and modern. Ancient period again is classified into five periods, that is Harappan art, Mauryan art and architecture, post-Mauryan, Gupta age, and South India. Then in medieval, there are two more sub-classification, that is Delhi Sultanate and Mughal art. And lastly, modern India is further classified into two: art and architecture, that is Indo-Gothic style and Neo-Roman style. So this is the whole pro forma of your architecture, Indian architecture, that you are going to learn in these sessions. Okay, so let's begin with the first one, that is your Harappan architecture. Now, first of all, some of the salient feature of Harappan architecture. Okay, here we are not going to learn how Harappan architecture evolved, or what all were the sites of Harappan architecture, etc., etc. We are only concerned with its architecture, sculpture, and pottery. Okay, because it is Indian art and culture session. Okay. So the salient features of Harappan architecture: the towns were laid out in a rectangular grid pattern. The roads ran in north-south and east-west direction and cut each other at right angles. Okay, that is if you prepare right angles like this. Okay, so these are the right angles at which the roads cut each other. What is the right angle? Right angle is this one, right? This one right angle. So this between the right angles which is going through is your road. So Harappan roads cut each other at right angles. Okay. Now, there were three types of buildings in Harappan architecture. First was dwelling houses, where people used to live. Second was public buildings, which were for public use, like the granaries. Okay. Then you have the public baths, mostly where ritualistic cleansing used to take place. It was considered as sacred, the public baths. Okay. One of the public baths known as the Great Bath was found at Mohenjo-daro. Okay. Now, used burnt mud bricks were used. Burnt mud bricks. Okay. They used to use the burnt mud bricks, not the normal mud bricks. So this is one of the most remarkable feature of the Harappan architecture, because till date we find the remains of the Harappan cities. Why? Because they use such kind of bricks which survived for so many centuries. Okay. And then Mesopotamian people called the Indus Valley culture as Melua, culture or civilization, you can say. IVC is the Indus Valley civilization. So the Mesopotamian people who were the contemporary of Indus Valley civilization. They used to call the people of Indus Valley civilization as the Meluhans, or the Indus Valley civilization as Meluha. Okay, so if in the examination you are asked what is Meluha, you should be clear that Meluha is equal to Indus Valley civilization, and the Mesopotamian people used to call Indus Valley civilization as Meluha. Okay. Then the city was divided into two parts. Okay, one was the upraised citadel and second was the lower part, that is upper city or lower city, you can say. One was the upper city, one was the lower city. Okay, so the upper city was called the citadel. Okay, in the figure you can see it. This is the citadel and this is the lower city. Okay, now see, upraised citadel mein kya hota tha? There were granaries, there were administrative buildings, there were pillared halls, courtyards, residence of the rulers and the aristocrats. Okay, rulers or aristocrats or the priests, etc. The higher class. So the higher class used to live in the citadel. Okay. And all the most of the public buildings, you can say, the granaries or the other administrative buildings or pillared halls where meetings used to take place. Okay, public meetings used to take place. Then you have the courtyard, etc. So all these were in the citadel, which was upraised. Here in the figure you can see this is the citadel. Then was your lower city or your lower part of the Harappan architecture. In the lower part, residence of the working class people used to be there, which was either single storied or double storied. Okay, some instances of double storied houses has also been found in the Harappan civilization. Okay, Many of the houses were single storied, but many of these were double storied as well. Okay, no large monumental structures have been found like temples or palaces. Okay, only simple structures were there, houses or public buildings, etc. Okay, temples, etc. were not there. That means idolized worshipping was not there. Okay, community idolized worshipping was not there in the time of Harappan civilization. Then in Harappan architecture, you note advanced drainage system. This was again the next most remarkable feature of Harappan civilization after the use of burnt mud bricks. Okay, drainage system at that time. So there used to be small drains in each house which connected with the larger drains outside their houses. Okay, each house had their own drains which connected with the larger drains. Now the drains were covered, which were temporary in nature, which can be used okay, temporary in nature. Why? Because the lids can be removed for cleaning purposes. Okay, so they were very much aware about hygiene purposes. Then there was provision of cleaning of drains as well. As I told you, the covered drains were temporary so that it can be cleaned at regular intervals. Okay, then coming on to the seals. ओके यहाँ पे हमने बात कर ली अभी तक वहाँ का आर्किटेक्चर कैसा था. फाइन, कैसे वहाँ पे हाउसेस थे, कौन कौन सी बिल्डिंग्स थी. ओके, टू पार्ट्स थे सिटीज में, सिटाडेल, लोअर पार्ट एटसेट्रा, ड्रेनेज सिस्टम एंड ऑल. नाउ कमिंग ऑन टू द अदर फीचर्स ऑफ हड़प्पन स्कल्पचर. अभी तक हमने देखा हड़प्पन architecture. Now we are going to see Harappan sculpture and what are its salient features. So first of all, you will see seals, which was in use of Harappans on a large scale. So we find square, triangular, and circular seals. Then what was the materials used in the seals? So most of the time it is steatite, okay, which is a soft stone which is easy to mold into a seal. So steatite was used, agate was used, shirt, copper, faience, terracotta. Other than these, copper, gold, and ivory was also used. Okay, so the most common materials were the steatite, agate, shirt, copper, faience, and terracotta. Now, more expensive seals or more rare seals were also made of copper, gold, and ivory. So these were all the materials that were used in making seals. Then on the seals, we will find pictographic script. Okay, pictographic script of the Indus Valley civilization, which has not been deciphered till date. Okay, ऐसा question आ भी चुका है exam में, that whether the script of Indus Valley civilization has been deciphered or not. So this pictographic script is bidirectional. Mostly it is written from right to left. Okay, right to left लिखा जाता है mostly इसको, but at many places it is found that ये left to right भी लिखी गई है. Okay, one line में it is from right to left and on the other line it is left to right. So if you say that the pictographic script of Indus Valley civilization is written from right to left, the answer is wrong. Okay, it is bidirectional. It is written from right to left as well as from left to right. Okay, now there were animal impressions on the seals apart from the pictographic script. Okay, apart from the pictographic script, you will also find animal impressions on the seal. Now, what all animals were used on the seals? These were the unicorn, humped bull, rhinoceros, tiger, elephant, buffalo, bison, goat, markhor, ibex, crocodile, etc. But the most common animals were the starting 4-5. That is unicorn, humped bull, rhinoceros, tiger, and elephant. But also buffalo, bison, goat, markhor, ibex, crocodile were found. And the most important thing, no evidence of cow on seal, because till the time of Indus Valley civilization, cow was not considered as sacred. Okay, it was at the time of Vedic civilization that the cow was considered as sacred. So cow was not found on seals of Indus Valley civilization people. Now the seals had an animal or human figure on one side and an inscription on the opposite side, or inscriptions on the both the sides. Okay, एक side पे या तो human या animal figure होगा, दूसरे side पे inscription होगा, या फिर दोनों ही side पे inscriptions होगा. Now the important thing over here is some seals had inscriptions on third side as well. Now what is the third side? Okay, the seal were having 3 dimensions, not 2 dimensions. Okay, अब सिर्फ आगे पीछे नहीं, उसका थर्ड डायमेंशन भी होता था. So some of the times third dimension पे inscription लिखा जाता था उसमें. Okay, most important. Now mathematical images भी पाई गई है seals पे. So there are mathematical images which might be used for educational purposes as well. It is said that the experts who are researching on it, they said that the mathematical images which are found on the seals might have been used for some educational purposes. Okay. Then one important seal has been discovered from the Indus Valley civilization known as the Pashupati seal, which you can see here in the picture. Okay, this first picture is the Pashupati seal. Now, we need to understand the features of this Pashupati seal. Where it is discovered at Mohenjo-daro. What does it depict? It depicts a human figure or a deity who is sitting cross-legged. Okay, you can see here, he is sitting cross-legged. He is a human figure or a deity. Now, what is he wearing? He is wearing a 3-horned headgear. We can see 2 horns over here, but the third horn is hidden behind. Okay, so he is wearing 3-horned headgear. Now, what are animals are surrounding him? So, there are so many animals, and among these we find elephant, tiger, who are on the left side, and then on the right side we found a rhinoceros and a buffalo. Okay, now seat ke niche bhi kuch dikh raha hai. Okay, we can see some animals below his seat as well. So there are 2 antelopes that are below his seat. So this is the depiction of this whole Pashupati seal. ठीक है, Pashupati seal में क्या क्या है, सारा के सारा उसका description है. First of all, it is found in Mohenjo-daro. There is a human figure who is sitting cross-legged. Okay, he is wearing 3-horned headgear. We have animals who are surrounding the figure: elephant, tiger, buffalo, and rhinoceros. Then also 2 antelopes are seen below his seat. And other seal which is below it, it is the unicorn seal that we have seen earlier. Okay, you have seen, right? Unicorn bhi use hota hai. Unicorn is used on animal seals. So here is a seal with unicorn. Fine. Now we are done with the seals thing. We'll move on to the bronze figure. Okay, this also comes under the Harappan sculpture. So the bronze figures specifically used lost wax technique. Okay, so Indus Valley people use the lost wax technique to make their bronze figure. So if you remember, if you have ever read Indus Valley civilization in your textbooks, so you must have read about the dancing girl or the bronze girl. Okay, so the lost wax technique is used in making this dancing girl of bronze. Okay, so lost wax technique को बोला जाता है सीरेपेद्यूर. Okay, इसमें क्या होता है, स्टेप बाय स्टेप यहाँ पे easily explain किया है. So let's see the step-wise procedure of lost wax technique. तो सबसे पहले क्या होता है, the wax figures are first coated with wet clay and allowed to dry. Okay, so the क्या होता है, wax बहुत soft होता है, wax is very soft, so it is easily can be molded into beautiful sculptures. Okay, so the wax is first of all molded into a beautiful sculpture, and then it is coated with wet clay. Now that wet clay is allowed to dry, and now when the wet clays dry out, then it is heated. Okay, when it is heated, what will happen? The wax which is inside it will melt. Okay, now the clay has taken the shape of the wax figure. Now we don't need the wax. Now we will melt out the wax from the coated clay. So the wax is then poured out through a tiny hole from the clay figure, and liquid metal kaun sa, we are talking about bronze figure. So the liquid bronze is poured inside the hollow mold. Okay, now after the metal is cooled down into that clay figure and it has been solidified, the clay is removed, and what we get at the final stage is a metal figure of the same shape जो हमने wax figure बनाया था. Okay, so what are the steps? First of all, we create a wax figure, then we coat it with clay, we dry it, we heat it, wax is removed so that wax can be used for another sculpture. Okay, now inside that clay figure which has become hard due to heating, Okay, we insert liquid metal and we keep it to become set. Now when it is set, it has cooled down, it has solidified, we will remove the clay. Okay, and the metal figure will come out with the same shape which was on the wax and the clay. So this is how this dancing girl has been prepared. Okay, so some features of this bronze dancing girl is that she is standing in the Tribhanga posture. Okay, you can see one hand is on her hip, another is here. So this is called the Tribhanga posture. So she is a naked woman. She is wearing only ornaments. So which ornament she is wearing? Some bangles in her left arm and one amulet and bracelet in her right arm. So here you can see the bracelet. Here is your amulet and here are some bangles which she is wearing. Okay, then after the bronze figures under Harappan sculptures we have some terracotta sculptures as well. Okay, terracotta kya hota hai? What is terracotta? Terracotta is fire baked clay. When you bake clay it becomes terracotta. So this is your terracotta sculpture. Now under terracotta sculpture, bronze sculptures may we have seen the lost wax technique. Now in terracotta sculptures we have the use pinching method. Okay, pinching method is used in the terracotta sculpture. Now what is the pinching method? Pinch pottery means pressing the ball of clay with the thumb and shaping the pottery out of such ball of clay with the help of fingers and thumbs especially. Okay, you must have done these things in your school craft lectures. Okay, clay मंगवाया होगा आपसे. Okay, clay must have been sought with you कि आप school में clay लेकर आओ. We will prepare some beautiful craft piece from that clay. So the soft clay which is used to make sculptures with your thumbs and fingers. Okay, you mold the clay with your thumbs and fingers. This is called pinch pottery, where you use your thumbs. Okay, pinch pottery. Fine. So pinch pottery or pinching method is used in the terracotta sculptures of Indus Valley civilization. What are the examples of terracotta sculptures of this period? So we have the mother goddess. Okay, here is the image of the terracotta sculpture that has been found in the Harappan civilization. The mother goddess. Now some features of the mother goddess. She has been found at many sites of Harappan civilization. It is said that probably she was worshipped for prosperity and she might have been a goddess of fertility cults. Okay, so these are some of the features of mother goddess. Mother goddess sculpture is prepared using the pinching method and she is made of terracotta. What is terracotta? It is fire baked clay. Clear? Now we also find a bearded priest. This is also a part of Harappan sculpture. So it is the figure of a bearded man draped in a shawl with trefoil patterns. The eyes are elongated and half closed as in meditation, as you can see. Okay, his eyes are elongated and it is half closed as is seen that he is in meditation. He is draped with a shawl. He has beard. Okay. So the figure also has an armlet on the right hand. You can see. Okay, this is the armlet which the sculpture is wearing on the right arm, and a plain woven fillet across the head. Okay, plain woven fillet he is wearing across his head. So these are some features of this bearded priest. Okay, why he is called the priest? Because it is said that the features which the sculpture is adorning, that is a shawl and the armlet or the beard, it coincides with a priest. Hence the sculpture is set as a bearded priest sculpture. Okay, next sculpture that you find in Harappan sites is the red sandstone figure of a male torso. Here you can see. So the torso has a frontal posture with a well-baked shoulders and a prominent abdomen. You can see the finishing. Okay, you can see here are the shoulders. Here is the abdomen, which looks so real. Okay, then there are socket holes in the neck and shoulders, probably for the attachment of head and arms. So like when you buy dolls from the market, okay, Barbie dolls, wherein you can remove the hands, you can remove the head of the doll, then again you can join it. Sockets are provided inside the dolls, right? Same in this sculpture, the same way sockets are provided, wherein the head can be attached, the hands can be attached. Okay, so this is the red sandstone figure of a male torso. Red sandstone has been used in making this sculpture. Okay. So we have finished with Harappan architecture. We have finished with the Harappan sculpture. Now we will move on to the Harappan pottery. So the pottery in Harappan civilization were of two types. One is the plain and one is painted. And both these type of potteries were mostly wheel made. There were some instances wherein handmade potteries were also found, but mostly they were made by wheel. So we have two types, plain and painted. So plain के of course कोई features नहीं होंगे, we don't have any features in the plain pottery is plain pottery. We do have some features of the painted pottery. So the painted pottery is also known as red and black pottery. Okay, why red and black pottery? Because the background color was red and black color was used to make designs on the red background. Hence, red and black pottery. So when in the exams you see red and black pottery, immediately Harappan culture or Harappan civilization should come in your mind. Okay, red and black pottery is equal to Harappan civilization. So red is the background and black is the design. Okay, design color. Then themes क्या होते थे इसके? Themes used to be trees, birds, animal figures or geometrical patterns. One of the example you can see over here. Okay, the picture over here is red and black pottery wherein red background is used. Okay, ये black and white है इसलिए शायद आपको background में black दिख रहा होगा, but in reality it is having a red background and with the black color the designs have been made. Okay, so you can see यहाँ पे कुछ sun जैसा दिख रहा है, then some geometrical figures also you can see over here. So these are some of the themes which are used on Harappan pottery. Now what were the uses of these potteries? So there were three uses: household purposes, miniature vessels and perforated pots. So household purposes जैसे कि आपको storage करना है किसी चीज का, water storage, grain storage or something else. Okay, so this was for the household purposes. Now there were some miniature vessels, small pots which were used for decorative purposes. Okay, till date also we use such miniature vessels to decorate our houses. Okay, then we had perforated pots which were with holes. In the picture you can see these are the perforated pots which had some holes. Now what is the use of these perforated pots? For specifically for straining liquor or something like that. अगर आपको कुछ strain करना है, okay, you want to strain some liquid thing, you can strain it with these perforated pots. So basically pottery was used for these three purposes. Okay, now coming on to the Harappan ornaments. So the materials that were used in Harappan ornaments were precious metals as gold or silver, etc., gemstones, bones and baked clay. So the simplest of the Harappan ornaments would be made of baked clay, and the most costlier, or we can say the most beautiful ones or the most valued ornaments of the Harappan civilization were made of precious metals like gold and silver. Okay, then both men and women used to wear ornaments. Then what kind of ornaments were worn by women? Girdles, earrings and anklets. Very important. Okay, though ornaments were worn by both men and women, some ornaments like girdles, earrings and anklets were worn only by women. Okay, all the ornaments were not worn by both men and women. There were some ornaments which were meant specifically and only for women, and these were girdles, earrings and anklets. Then some bead factories had been found in Chanudaro and Lothal, which were used to make ornaments. Okay, so these are some of the features of Harappan ornaments, and some pictures of their ornaments has been given over here. Okay, which they used to wear like necklaces, armlets, okay, earrings, etc., bangles. You can see over here. These are the ornaments of the Harappan civilization. Okay, so here we end with the Harappan architecture. Fine. I hope everything is clear with Harappan architecture. First, we have seen Harappan architecture. What were the salient features, buildings, etc. Then we have seen its sculptures. Okay, the bearded priest or the bronze girl, lost wax technique, pinch method. Fine. Then what we have seen? Do you remember? Harappan pottery. Okay, we have seen Harappan pottery. And lastly, we have come across Harappan ornaments. Fine. Now we will move on to the Mauryan architecture. So again, the Mauryan architecture has been divided into two: court art and architecture and popular art. Okay, so the court art was done through court initiative and the popular art was an individual initiative. Under the court art, we will be learning about palaces, pillars, and stupas that has been made by the kings and princes. Then under popular art, we will be seeing caves, pottery, and sculptures, okay, which have been prepared by the individuals. Okay, so have you remembered this map? How Mauryan art has been divided? Court art, popular art. Under court art, we have palaces, pillars, stupas. Popular art, we have caves, pottery, and sculptures. So starting with the court art, palaces. So सबसे पहले palace of Chandragupta Maurya. So the palace of Chandragupta Maurya was inspired by the Achaemenid palaces at Persepolis in Iran, that is Persia. At that time, it was known as Persia. So Chandragupta Maurya took some examples or took some ideas from the Persian palaces, and hence his palace was having some features of the Achaemenid palaces of Persia. Okay, wood was the principal building material. Very important point. Okay, wood was used in making palaces in the Mauryan times. Hence, we do not have much remains available at this time, at present time, about the Mauryan Empire, about their palaces or other structures that they have made through wood, because wood decays fast, unlike the Harappan civilization wherein bricks have been used. Okay, bricks survive till date, but wood cannot. It decay at a faster rate. So as wood was their principal building material, many of their buildings cannot survive till the present date. Okay, then Ashoka's palace at Kumrahar. In the picture you can see there is some remains of the palace site which is located in Kumrahar. This was used to be Ashoka's palace. So some features about his palace: it had a high central pillar and was a 3-story wooden structure. Again, Ashoka also used wood in his structure, though he used stones or bricks also, but wood was his main building material. The palace walls were decorated with carvings and sculptures, which cannot be seen because the carvings and sculptures were done on wooden structure. Hence, the wood disappeared. With that, carvings and sculptures also disappeared. What all we have remains is of some stone structures from this palace, which you can see in the picture. Okay, so these are the remains of the Kumrahar palace of Ashoka. Okay, so the most important thing you need to remember over here is that wood was the principal building material in the Mauryan times. Okay, and Chandragupta Maurya's palace was influenced by Persian palaces, the Achaemenid palaces. Then the next one, pillars. Okay, so these pillars were usually made of Chunar sandstones, and they had 4 parts. Okay, which are the 4 parts? First was a long shaft, which you can see over here in the picture. Okay, you have a long shaft. Then upon the shaft, you have the capital. Okay, this is the capital, which was either lotus shaped or bell shaped. Okay, then upon the capital, there is abacus, which is circular. You can see here, this is the abacus. And then upon the abacus, one animal figure is placed. So this is the pillar structure of Mauryan times. Okay, सबसे नीचे at the below you will have a monolith shaft, okay, which has been prepared from a single piece of stone. Monolith shaft. Upon it you have the capital, which is either lotus shaped or bell shaped. Upon it you have an abacus. Okay, this is the abacus, which is circular, rectangular in shape. Then upon it one animal figure is placed. So here the animal figure is the lion. Okay, so this is the basic structure of Ashokan pillars. Now some extra dose of information for you. Okay, ये वाला figure देखकर, looking at this figure, you must have remember something. Yes, you are right. It is our national emblem, which we have taken from the Ashokan pillar. So some extra dose with this. So the abacus and the animal part of the Sarnath pillar, which we have seen over here. Okay. forms the official national emblem of India. This is our national emblem, which we have seen. Okay, so the abacus, this is the abacus, and the animal part. This is our national emblem. So in the abacus of the Sarnath pillar, 4 animals are shown representing 4 directions. Okay, here you can see only 2 animals, right? 2 animals are behind. So which are the 4 animals? One is a horse, which is representing west direction. We have a bull representing east direction, elephant representing south direction, and a lion representing north direction. Okay, now more information about these animals. So the horse, which is also called the galloping horse, it represents the horse Kanthak, which Buddha is said to have used for going away from princely life. We all know the story of Buddha, okay, that Buddha left his kingdom at a very early stage. Okay, so while living his princely life, while living his kingdom, he used his horse Kanthaka. So this horse on this emblem, the Sarnath pillar, represents that horse. Then what does a bull represent? So the bull depicts the zodiac sign of Taurus, the month in which Buddha was born. So Buddha was born in the month of Taurus. Okay, and this bull represents the sign of Taurus, the sign of the month in which Buddha was born. Then the elephant depicts the dream of Queen Maya, a white elephant entering her womb. Okay, and lastly, the lion. What the lion shows? It shows the attainment of enlightenment, enlightenment of Buddha. So Buddha attained enlightenment, and hence this lion shows that Buddha has attained the enlightenment. So all these animals have some meaning on the pillars. Okay, so this is the meaning. In the national emblem of India, the word Satyamev Jayate from Mundaka Upanishad important. जो Satyamev Jayate national emblem पे लिखा हुआ है, okay, Satyamev Jayate, which has been inscribed on the national emblem, has been taken from the Mundaka Upanishad. And what does Satyamev Jayate means? It means truth alone triumphs. Okay, and it is in the Devanagari script. Okay, the script that has been used to write the Satyamev Jayate is Devanagari script. Now, the capital is crowned by the wheel of the law, that is Dharma Chakra. Okay, Dharma Chakra, you can see. This is the Dharma Chakra. Then the lion symbolized Buddha spreading Dhamma in all direction. It was built in the commemoration of the first sermon by Buddha, or the Dhamma Chakra Parivartana. Okay, the lions which you can see. Okay, there are 4 lions, but in our emblem we can see only 3 lions from the front side. One is on the back side. So these 4 lions symbolize that Buddha is spreading his Dhamma in all the 4 directions through these 4 lions. Okay. So why this was built? The 4 lions was built in the commemoration of the first sermon, which was given by Buddha. Now, first sermon जो है उसको धम्म चक्र परिवर्तन भी कहा जाता है. Okay, first sermon of Buddha is also called as धम्म चक्र परिवर्तन. Okay, so it is built to commemorate धम्म चक्र परिवर्तन. Clear? Now, after that extra dose, let's come on to the third type of court art, that is the stupa. Okay, so the stupas were burial moons prevalent in India from the Vedic period. So be clear over here that stupas did not start since the Mauryan times. Okay, Mauryan times से start नहीं हो रहा हुआ है ये. It were in use since the Vedic period. Okay, so it is a conventional representation of a funeral cumulus in which relics and ashes of the dead were kept. Okay, when you bury a person, when you bury the relics or ashes or the remains of the dead person in the ground, you create a moon over it. Okay, that someone is being buried over here. So these moons came to be called as stupa, wherein some important persons were buried or remains of some important persons were there. So they came to be known as stupas. Okay, so during the period of Ashoka, the art of stupas reached its climax. Almost 84,000 stupas were erected during his period. Okay, so stupa sculpture, okay, making of stupas reached its climax. That maximum of stupas has been created in the period of Ashoka. Okay, so here if you can see, there is a basic structure of stupa with its different parts. Okay, so here See, सबसे ऊपर you have the chhatras or umbrellas. Okay, chhatras means umbrella, chhatri you can say. Okay, then below that you have the yashti. Below it you have the harmika. Okay, then this is the passageway. Passageway for people. People walk over here. Okay, they take rounds of the stupa through this passageway. Okay, they take rounds of this stupa. Fine. Then you have the toran, so west toran and the east toran. Then you have the double stairway. Over here you can see you can climb the stairs from here as well as you can climb the stairs way from here. Okay, then you have the south toran, that is the entrance toran, जिसको बहुत ही intricately सजाया जाता है. Okay, बहुत अच्छे से उसको decorate किया जाता है. The south toran is decorated very intricately. You can see over here. Okay, then you have the stone fence, the boundary. This is the boundary. Okay, so these are the parts of a basic stupa. Okay, additions bhi ho sakte, there can be additions in it as well. There can be some different parts as well, but this is the basic structure of stupa in the Mauryan times. Fine. Now it is said that after the death of Buddha, 9 stupas were erected. Okay, it is said that after the death of Buddha, 9 stupas were erected. 8 of them had the relics of Buddha at their Medi, while the 9th had the pot in which the relics were originally kept. Okay, so वो 9 स्तूपास कौन से हैं जो बुद्धा की डेथ के बाद बनाए गए हैं? So these 9 stupas were at these places: Rajgriha, Vaishali, Kapilavastu, Allakappa, Ramagrama, Vetapida, Pava, Kushinagar, and Pippalivana. So these are the 9 places where 9 stupas were built after the death of Buddha. Okay, and out of them, 8 had relics of Buddha at their Medi. Okay, that is they were buried inside the stupas, and 1 had the relics in a pot. Okay, originally it was kept in a pot. It wasn't directly buried. Fine. Now, the core of the stupa was made of unburnt brick, while the outer surface was made by using burnt bricks, which were then covered with a thick layer of plaster. Understanding? The core of the stupa, the innermost part of the stupa was made of unburnt brick, that is pure clay brick. Then the core of the stupa, okay, these unburnt brick were covered with an outer surface, which was again made by burnt bricks. Okay, first you have unburnt bricks, then outer core you have the burnt bricks, and now both of these, the core and the outer core, were covered by a thick layer of plaster. Okay, then the Medi and the Toran were decorated by wooden sculpture. Again, we don't have a lot of remains of these wooden sculptures because wood decay fast. Okay. So the Medi and the Toran, you can see this is the southern Toran as we have seen in the picture. Okay, this is the southern Toran. As I told you, these are intricately decorated. Okay, so here you can see the decorations. There are many animals and human figurines on it. Yaksha and Yakshinis are used. Okay, so this is the southern Toran. So the Toran are decorated by wooden sculptures mostly. Now devotees walk around the Pradakshina Path or open ambulatory passageway as a token of worship. As I told you, this is the passageway. Okay, upper level walkway, ambulatory passageway. So this is the passageway. So the devotees walk around the Pradakshina Path. Okay, isko Pradakshina Path bhi bola jata hai. This passageway is also called as Pradakshina Path. So they walk around the stupa on this Pradakshina Path or passageway as a token of their worship. Okay, some examples of stupas at the time of Mauryas are Sanchi Stupa at MP and Piprava Stupa at the UP. So the Piprava Stupa is the oldest one. Yes, though Sanchi Stupa is the most famous one, but the Piprava Stupa is the oldest one of these stupas. Now this is the picture of a Sanchi Stupa. All right. Then here we end with the court art. Now coming on to the popular art. First one is the caves. So this period saw the emergence of rock-cut cave architectures. Okay. So during the Mauryan period, these caves were generally used as vihars. So what are vihars? Vihars were used as living quarters by monks. Okay. Ye question bhi aaya hua. This question has also come in the exam. What is the difference between vihar and chaitya? So vihar is the living place for the monks and chaitya is a prayer hall. Okay. So the caves are divided into two, Vihars and Chaitya. Vihar is the place where monks used to live, and Chaitya is the place where monks used to pray. Okay, don't get confused between these two things. While the early caves were used by the Ajivika sect, later they became popular as Buddhist monasteries. Okay. The caves during Mauryan period were marked by a highly polished finish of the interior walls and decorative gateways. Very important. So before the Mauryan period, though there were existence of caves, they were not highly polished, nor they were decorated with such intricate decorations. Okay. So in the Mauryan times, the caves were highly polished as well as the walls were decorative. Okay, the gateways were very decorative. If you can see in the picture, how the gateways, the entrances decorated, so beautiful uh, designs are made away. Okay, so this is the Barabar caves. Okay, so these are the decorated entrance or gateways of the Barabar cave. So it belongs to the Mauryan period. Okay, other examples of popular art caves is Nagarjuni caves in Bihar, Barabar caves in Bihar, which were formed during the time of Dashrath. Now, Dashrath was the grandson of Ashoka. Okay. Now, next on the popular art is sculptures. So, two of the famous sculptures of the Mauryan period are those of Yaksha and Yakshi. Okay, so they were objects of worship related to all the three religions. Yaksha and Yakshi used to be worshipped by Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism. All these three religions used to worship Yaksha and Yakshis. Okay, so the earliest mention of Yaksha can be found in Silpadikaram, a Tamil text. Okay, when you are saying that Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all these three religions used to worship Yaksha and Yakshi, that doesn't mean that it does not have any influence in the south. Okay, if you have read ancient history, you must be knowing that Jainism has spread to the south as well through Chandragupta Maurya. Okay, so though South India have the impact of Jainism at a later stage, but still it do have a lot of influence. So the mention of Yakshi can also be found in South Indian texts. So the earliest mention of Yakshi is found in a Tamil text called Silpadi Karam. So agar exam mein kabhi, if in case in exam you are asked about it, don't think that how Yaksha and Yakshini can be mentioned in the South Indian text if they are related to Jainism, Hinduism or Buddhism. Okay, so be clear about it. So similarly, of all the Jain Tirthankaras were associated with the Yakshi. Okay, each and every Jain Tirthankara. Okay, there are 24 Tirthankaras we know. So all these 24 Tirthankaras have been associated with a particular Yakshi. For example, Padmavati Devi. This Padmavati Devi is a Yakshi and she is associated with Lord Parsanath. Okay, he is the 23rd Tirthankara of Jains. So she is the dedicated deity of Lord Parshamnath. Fine. So some sculptures of Yaksha and Yakshini which have been made are these. So this is the Yakshini sculpture which has been found in a Toran at Sanchi Stupa, and this is a sculpture of a Yaksha. Okay, Yakshi is a female version and Yaksha is a male version. Clear? Then under popular art, we have seen the third one was pottery. So pottery of Mauryan period is generally referred to as northern black polished ware. If you remember, Harappan pottery was called red and black ware with red background and black designs. So in the Mauryan period, it is called northern black polished ware. Why northern? Because it was found in the northern part. Okay, Zadatar mostly it was found in the northern part, and they were characterized by black paint and highly lustrous finish, and were generally used as luxury items. Okay, northern because of their region, black because of their color, polished because they were highly lustrous, hence northern black polished ware. Okay, they have often been referred to as the highest level of pottery. Okay, in exam you can be asked which of the following pottery is considered as the or referred to as the highest level of pottery. So it is northern black polished ware of the Mauryan period. Okay, picture is given over here. It is a specimen of northern black polished ware. Okay. Now we end with the Mauryan architecture, coming on to the post-Mauryan architecture now. So first one is the rock cut caves. So this period saw the development of two types of rock caves. First is the Chaitya and second is the Vihar. I told you the difference between the Chaitya is the prayer hall and Vihar is the residential hall. Okay. So these were developed for both Buddhist and Jain monks. Okay. So Chaityas and Vihars were not specifically related to Buddhist monks or Jain monks. So these were developed for both these types of monks. These are decorated with human and animal figures, and some examples are Karle Chaitya Hall and Ajanta Caves. Okay, so here is your Karle Chaitya Hall, and here is your one Vihar at Ellora. Okay, so Vihar, that is living spaces, used to be like this, like small rooms, and here is the prayer hall, Karle Chaitya Hall. Okay, so these were called rock cut caves because they have been made through cutting the rocks. Okay, we are learning about the post-Mauryan architecture now. Fine. Then we have the Udaygiri and Khandagiri caves of Odisha. So these caves are made under King Kharavela in the 1st, 2nd century, and it lies near the modern day Bhubaneswar in Odisha. Now the cave complex has both man-made and natural caves. Okay, everything here is not man-made, everything here is not natural. So this have a mixed feature of man-made and natural caves. Now these caves are famous for the Hathi Gumfa inscription, which is also called Elephant Cave inscription. Okay, aage we will be studying about it in further slides as well. So these caves are famous for the Hathi Gumfa inscription, or English if we say it is called Elephant Cave inscription. Okay, it is in Brahmi script and it highlights various military campaigns undertaken by the king Kharavela. So Udaygiri and Khandagiri caves, Hathi Gumfa inscription, King Kharavela, all are related. Okay, उदयगिरी एंड खंडागिरी केव्स के अंदर आता है हाथी गुम्फा इंस्क्रिप्शन. ओके, दिस हाथी गुम्फा इंस्क्रिप्शन इज इन ब्राह्मी स्क्रिप्ट. नाउ दिस हाथी गुम्फा इंस्क्रिप्शन इज रिलेटेड टू which king? It is related to King Kharavela. Fine. Then we also have a Rani Gumpha cave in Udaygiri, which is a double storied and has some beautiful sculptures. Okay, Rani Gumpha, Hathi Gumpha. Okay, Gufa. Gufa we say. Gufa means cave. Okay. Then stupa. So stupa became larger and more decorative in the post-Mauryan period. Okay, stupas started in the Vedic age. Okay, Mauryan age में start नहीं हुए हैं. They had their emergence or origin in the Vedic period. Okay, Mauryan period में they became larger, and then in the post-Mauryan period they became even more larger and more decorative. Okay, stone was increasingly used in place of wood and brick. Okay, so the use of stone increasingly was used in the post-Mauryan period and not in the Mauryan period. Mauryan period mein the principal material was wood. Okay, wood was principally used in the architectural work. Now, in the post-Mauryan period, wood was replaced by stone. So the Shunga dynasty introduced the idea of torans as beautifully decorated gateways to the stupas. It was Shunga dynasties who had the idea of torans. Okay. Now the torans were intricately carved with figures and patterns and were evidence of Hellenistic influence, as we have seen in the previous pictures, that how beautifully the torans were decorated. Okay, here is one example. If you can see the remnants of Bharat Stupa, which was stone made. So this is the toran, which was decorated with some figures and patterns. Okay, Hellenistic influence, Hellenistic as in Greek influence. We will be learning about it in the further slides. Okay. Now three prominent school of sculpture. Now here till here we have done the architecture. Okay, architecture of post-Mauryan period ends over here. Now next we have sculpture of the post-Mauryan era. Now three prominent schools were developed in this period. Okay, three prominent schools of what? Three prominent schools of sculpture developed in the post-Mauryan period, not in the Mauryan period. Okay, which were these three schools? Gandhara, Mathura and Amravati. Okay, now we will have a look upon the differences between these three schools, because this is the most important part of this post-Mauryan syllabus. Okay, so we should know the basic differences between the Gandhara, Mathura and Amravati. It is important for your prelims as well as for your mains examination. Okay. Okay. So we have here basis first, then we have the differences between the Gandhara, Mathura and Amravati school. That on what basis we have differentiated these three schools. So the first basis is external influence, that whether any of these schools of architecture, sculptures have been influenced by any external entity. So in Gandhara, we do have influence of Greek. Okay, so heavy influence of Greek or Hellenistic sculpture, as we have seen it earlier as well. Okay, this term we have seen in earlier slides as well, Hellenistic sculpture. So do you remember where we have seen the term Hellenistic sculpture? Okay, so it is in the stupas. Okay, in the post-Mauryan times when we were doing the stupas, we have seen that they had Hellenistic features. Okay, so the Gandhara school of sculpture was heavily influenced by the Hellenistic sculpture or the Greek art, and it is also known as Indo-Greek art. Okay, that is a mixture of Indian art and the Greek art, that is called Indo-Greek art. Okay, now Mathura is a indigenous school and Amravati is also an indigenous school, and they are not influenced by any of the external culture. Now, ingredient used. So in Gandhara, we have two periods. The early school used the bluish gray sandstone and the later period used the mud and stucco. In the Mathura school of sculpture, they used spotted red sandstone, and in the Amravati school, they used white marbles. Okay, Gandhara bluish gray sandstone, mud and stucco, Mathura spotted and red sandstone, and Amravati white marbles. Then, what is the religious influence? So, the Gandhara school was mainly a Buddhist one. Okay, it was mainly influenced by the Buddhist. And then Mathura, we have Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism. All these three religions form part of Mathura school of sculpture. Then Amravati was mainly Buddhist. By its name, you may not, assume that it is related to Hinduism or Jainism or all these three or only two. Amravati school of sculpture was a mainly Buddhist school of sculpture. Okay, under Gandhara, it is mainly Buddhist. Under Amravati, it is mainly Buddhist. But under Mathura, all the three religions were there. Then, who patronized these? So, the Gandhara school was patronized by the Kushan rulers, the Mathura school was patronized by the Kushan rulers, and the Amravati was patronized by the Satavahana rulers. So, only Amravati is the odd one out. The rest two schools were patronized by the Kushan rulers. Okay. Then what is the area of their development? So Gandhara school of sculpture developed in the northwest frontier, okay, NWFP, which is in the modern day of Kandahar. Mathura was in Sonk and Kankilita, and Amravati was in the Krishna Godavari lower valley in and around Amravati and Nagarjunakonda in Andhra Pradesh, if you remember. Okay. Then what are the features of their Buddhist sculpture? How Buddha was shown in all these three schools of sculpture. So in Gandhara, Buddha was shown in spiritual state with wavy hair. Okay, we will be seeing the pictures here. You can see. In Gandhara, you can see wavy hairs, okay, of Buddha. And he was shown in a spiritual state. You can see he is in meditation. He is in a spiritual state, okay. He is wearing few ornaments in the Gandhara sculpture. If you can see, very few ornaments can be seen, or no ornaments even you can say. Then he is in a position of yogi. Yes, he is in a position of yogi doing meditation. Half eyes are closed as in meditation, and a protuberance on head signifying the omniscience of Buddha. So what is this protuberance? So here if you can see, here is some circle shown behind Buddha. Okay, so this is called the protuberance. Okay, something which is lying outside. Now, what this protuberance signifies, it signifies omniscience of Buddha. That is, Buddha knows everything. This protuberance shows that Buddha's is omniscience. That is, he knows everything. Okay. Now, features of Buddha sculpture in the Mathura school of sculpture. So Buddha is shown in delighted mood with smiling face. Okay, here if you can see, there are various facial expressions being shown of Buddha, and one is a smiling face and a delighted mood. Okay, a muscular body with tight dress. Okay, so sorry. So he's wearing tight dress, hence muscular body is shown through these tight dress. Okay, here you can see. So he is having a muscular body with tight clothes. Then shaven head and face, and he is seated in Padmasana with various mudra. See if you can see one of the mudra. With Gandhara mein he was just shown in a meditation state, but in Mathura he is shown with various mudra, and one of the mudra is this. Okay. Then similar protuberance. Okay, same. The protuberance which was there in Gandhara, the protuberance is there in the Mathura school as well, behind if you can see. Okay. Then what about Amravati? So Amravati is a narrative art, that is stories. It was having less emphasis on individual features, like in the case of Gandhara and Mathura, as we have seen, spiritual state with wavy hair, delighted mood, smiling face. All these tiny details were not given heed by the Amravati school because it was a narrative art and it depicted life stories of Buddha and the Jataka tales. Jataka tales was asked in UPSC prelims. Okay, that what are Jataka tales? So Jataka tales are stories about previous lives of Buddha in human and animal form. Okay, so there are something around more than 500 such stories, Jataka tales. Okay, so Amravati is a narrative art. So here if you can see, some narration is being shown. Okay, so this is the sculpture of Gandhara school, this is the sculpture of Mathura school, and this is the sculpture of Amravati, which shows some narration or stories about Jatakas or early lives of Buddhas. Okay. Now, quickly we will move on to the extra dose. The various mudras related to Buddha, as we have seen that. यहाँ पे मैंने आपको बताया था, in the Mathura school, he is shown with various mudras. So it's important to know that what are the various mudras related to Buddha. So first is Bhumi Sparsh Mudra. Okay, you can see here Bhumi Sparsh, his hand is touching the earth. That is the Bhumi. Earth is Bhumi Sparsh, touch. Okay, Bhumi Sparsh Mudra. Commonly associated with the blue Buddha known as Akshobhaya. Okay, and it represents the moment of Buddha attaining his enlightenment. So this is called the Bhumi Sparsh Mudra. So in exam you might be asked with some narrative that hands of Buddha is touching the feet, one hand is on his lap. So you should make an image of those lines in your mind, and then you should know that what kind of mudra is this. Okay, so you need to remember the images in your mind with the names. Bhumi Sparsha means this image. Okay, then you have the Dhyan Mudra, meditation, very simple. Okay, it is also called Samadhi or Yoga Mudra, and it signifies attainment of spiritual perfection. Then you have the Vitarka Mudra. Okay, in the image you can see the Vitarka Mudra. One hand is over here and the other one is like this. So it indicates fearlessness. And this gesture was shown by Buddha immediately after attaining enlightenment. Okay, sorry. This one is not the Vitarka Mudra. It is Abhay Mudra. Okay, fearlessness means Abhay Mudra. It is wrongly typed over here. Okay, change it with Abhay Mudra. This one is not the Vitarka Mudra. Fine. This is the Abhay Mudra, which shows fearlessness. Okay, one hand is like this and one hand is like this on his lap. Okay, so this gesture was shown by Buddha immediately after attaining enlightenment. It is the Abhay Mudra and not Vitarka Mudra. ABHAY, Abhay Mudra. Okay, some typo mistake. Vitarka Mudra is over here. This is the Vitarka Mudra. So teaching, discussion or intellectual debate, teaching phase of preaching in Buddhism. So this is your Vitarka Mudra, teaching phase. or discussion phase or an intellectual debate. Okay, the circle formed by thumb and index finger maintains constant flow of energy. Okay, then you have the Dharma Chakra Mudra. So it means turning the wheel of dharma or law. If you do it like this, okay, in the picture you can see the hands are like this. Okay, one way, one circle is over here, another one is maintained by this finger. Okay, this is called the Dharma Chakra Mudra. So it is exhibited by Lord Buddha while he preached the first sermon. Okay, we have seen it already, Dharma Chakra Mudra. Then we have the Anjali Mudra. Okay, this one, simple one, Anjali Mudra, greetings, devotion and adoration. Very easy to remember. Okay, some of the mudras are very easy to remember. आपको पढ़ने की भी जरूरत नहीं है उसको, अपने आप इमेज बन जाएगी आपके माइंड में. But some of the mudras you need to remember it very well. Okay, and please, instead of Vitarka Mudra over here, do Abhay Mudra. This is not Vitarka Mudra. This is Abhay Mudra. Okay, which indicates fearlessness. Vitarka Mudra is this. Okay. Now Anjali Mudra kya hai? Simply Namaste. Your Namaste is the Anjali Mudra. Then you have the Uttar Bodhi Mudra. Okay, Uttar Bodhi Mudra is like this. You have seen all the fingers you have folded and then it is like this. Okay, so this is your Uttar Bodhi Mudra. So it means supreme enlightenment. Shakyamani Buddha, the liberator of Nagas, present this mudra. Okay, so Shakyamani Buddha is associated with this mudra. Okay, simply you need to just remember the mudras, that what is this mudras, because most probably you will be asked about the mudras, that one finger is this, one hand is in the lap, what kind of mudra is this? Okay, then you have the Varad Mudra. So Varad Mudra is simply, again, one hand is like this and another one is like this. Okay, so it indicates charity, compassion and granting wishes. It signifies 5 perfections. Which perfections are these? Generosity, morality, patience, effort and meditative concentration through your 5 fingers. Okay, all the 5 fingers are open in this. Then lastly you have the Karan Mudra. Okay, the Karan Mudra. Okay, like this. Okay, this finger is also, my finger is not getting molded right now like this. Okay, so both the fingers are like this. One finger will be touching your thumb, and so this pose is called the Karan Mudra. Okay, so it indicates warding off evil. It signifies expelling demons and negative energy, the Karan Mudra. So this is your Karan Mudra. Okay, energy created by this mudra helps remove obstacles such as sickness or negative thoughts. Okay, आपको demons को expel करना है, you have to expel the negative energy, you want to remove obstacles from your path, you want to ward off sickness or any negative thoughts from your mind. So this is the mudra. Okay, this is the mudra for that. Fine. So these are all the mudras, your extra dose for your examination. All right. So please do remember the images along with the mudras, and if you can remember some of their significance, that was what this mudra means, or what is its significant for, or what does it stand for. Okay, so with this we come to an end of the post-Mauryan architecture sculpture. Okay, now what is remaining is the Gupta architecture. Okay,